Hey guys, it's Pokémon TCG here, back with a brand new video for you guys. In today's video, we will be discussing Pokemon Japanese SV boxes. Will they boom or bust, and should you be investing in them in the current market? Just before I get into today's video though, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for 500 subscribers. I couldn't have done it without you guys, so a giveaway announcement will be coming in March, and if you're not subscribed yet, I hope you'll consider subscribing after watching this video. Now, let's get into it. So for the first part of this video, I thought it would be useful to set the scene, set the context for the current Pokemon market, especially for Japanese boxes. Now, if you're not new to the scene, you know that the Pokemon market is really down at the moment. There isn't that same level of interest in the Pokemon market, whether it's across English, Japanese, singles, or sealed, as there was before. So I think it's really important to set the scene for how cheap these SV booster boxes are. Now, before I go into that though, obviously this box is a massive exception. Pokemon 151 doesn't count, that is the anomaly for SV boxes. But if you look at the boxes that I have on my screen, so this is just for a UK store, you can see that the latest sets that have come out, pretty much chronologically, so after 151, I've got my mouse on Ruler of the Black Flame, so Japanese Obsidian Flames, Raging Surf, Future Flash, Wild Force, Cyber Dodge, Shiny Treasure. All of these are incredibly cheap at the moment. Even in the UK, after shipping costs, import costs, you can get these boxes for close to retail price. And I don't think we've been in this sort of situation for a very long time. Now, if you just look away from the UK market as well, if I just went on Amazon, you can see for SV based booster boxes, you can see that you can get them for like 7,000 yen or so, but specifically for Wild Force, I wanted to show you guys this. Let's see the latest sets, which is going to form part of Temporal Forces. If you look at Wild Force, let's look at the new condition boxes and how much we can get them for. So if I filter by new on Amazon Japan, you will see that you can get the newest sets for retail price, pretty much 5,400 yen. I'm pretty sure it is bang on retail price for these normal booster boxes. So I think at the start of this video, it's really important to say that a lot of these SV boxes are extremely cheap at the moment, because the base price at which you buy a box is going to influence whether you make a decision as to whether you should or shouldn't buy it, right? So that's part one. So I've talked about how cheap SV booster boxes are now, but obviously one of the main factors that affects sealed prices, at least in the initial short term, maybe 1 to 2 years following the release of a set, is the singles that are contained inside and how many there are, right? So what better way to see just how much SV there is out there than looking at PSA population reports. So as you can see, the total Pokemon 151 graded population just for the Japanese language is 237,774 cards. Now keep in mind that Pokemon 151 is not even 1 year old in Japanese. So yes, it is an extremely popular set, but it is also an extremely high population era as exemplified by this set. Now, we don't just have to look at Pokemon 151 to illustrate the point. We can look at Violet, which I think is probably one of the harder to find sets, Violet base set. If I look at the main chase card in there, we've got the Miriam Super Rare and the Miriam Special Art Rare. So the Special Art Rare is 13k in population, which is just insane. I mean, I know it's modern cards, but just for context, the Moonbryon from EV Heroes is about 5k in population. This set has been out Violet for a year and a half less than EV Heroes, yet the population is more than 2.5 times. So I think in terms of the arguments for whether SV is going to do well or not, I think this is going to be a con, which is that it's extremely high population and boxes and cards are extremely easy to get at the moment. I think another argument in the camp of don't invest in SV, we need to look at something that SV specifically introduced, right? So actually there's two things that I want to touch on in this case. So not only are the cards really high pop, and the sealed I think is printed in pretty high quantities, because we had made to order runs for both Clayburst, Pokemon 151, Ruler of the Black Flame, is specifically SV gave an increased limelight to trainer supporter cards. Because this is, aside from V-Star Universe, first time where we've got trainer SAR cards. So for SV, we've got the For Violet Base, for example, we've got the Miriam SAR. For Clayburst, we have the Iono SAR, which everyone will know about. And even in Shiny Treasure, we have another Iono SAR, we've got another Penny SAR. So waifus and trainers have been given a massive increased spotlight in SV. So I guess one of the questions you should be asking yourself is, do you believe in the potential of waifu and supporter cards? I, for one, have always felt that the interest in waifus and supporter cards has always been a little bit speculative and inorganic. I respect people who invest in waifus, you're allowed to do that, everyone's free to do what they want. But for me, when I look at a card like the Iono SAR, I just ask myself, how can someone be willing to pay £800 for a character that they were not even aware existed until about a year ago? Because Iono is obviously a new character that was introduced in the SV era. So that's sort of why I got a bit uncomfortable with investing or putting money into waifu cards. Now, waifu cards, as I've said, are a huge part of SV. So before you invest into SV, you should consider whether you actually believe in the potential of these cards. Now, don't get me wrong, even in this current down market, as you can see here on my screen, these Chase SAR cards from the earlier SV sets are still getting a lot of interest. So you can still see, if I can maybe just pull up Iono SAR for Clayburst, it's still worth quite a lot of money, right? £520 or like $650 let's say, even though that's nowhere near compared to where it was at the peak, that is still quite a lot of money. So maybe that's something that you want to hold on to as a positive for SV cards, which is actually these early sets, which are not really meant to have that great cards, do have some cards that are worth 3 digits and like comfortably 3 digits. So the second thing I wanted to touch on with SV that's specific to SV is the new gimmick that they introduced in this era, which is terrestrialized Pokemon. So maybe if we look at the Charizard SAR from Ruler of the Black Flame, that will illustrate my point. Because when you're deciding whether specifically to invest in SV boxes as opposed to other generations, you're assessing things that distinguish it from other generations. And for SV specifically, you've got these Tera crystallized Pokemon which have these hats on, and I have to say, these aren't everyone's favorite thing, right? But it is the set gimmick together with the future and past thing. So do we believe in the potential that they can make some really desirable cards from this? If I compare it to Sword and Shield, which is one of my favorite eras, Sword and Shield had VMAX Pokemon, right? And with VMAX Pokemon, the gimmick is a little bit less pronounced than for SV, because essentially VMAX Pokemon are just slightly bigger versions of the Pokemon. You can kind of understand that, and it also can transpose itself very nicely onto cards. So for VMAX, I think that was really popular, but for these Tera cards, I'm not sure if they're as popular. So I would put this as another con in the camp of whether you should invest in SV sealed boxes. It's in terms of the singles, you've got questions on the waifus, and you've also got questions on whether the gimmick itself is likely to stand the test of time. I think the final thing that I want to touch on in the camp of the cons as to why you shouldn't invest into SV sealed is English is closing the gap against Japanese in terms of card quality, in terms of release dates, in terms of aesthetics. I think it is. In some ways, not always. So the first thing to touch on with that is that in the SV era, they decided to change the border colors for SV cards. It's a huge change because people have always been complaining about the yellow borders in English Pokemon cards. But now you can see on these cards, the borders have been made silver, which basically mirrors the Japanese. So that's method number one, in which the gap or differentiation has been closed between Japanese and English. The second thing is actually the release dates. So I've noted this down. Ruler of the Black Flame came out on the 28th of July and Obsidian Flames came out just 2 weeks later on the 11th of August. What this meant was that you could get English cards at pre-releases, because pre-releases happened 2 weeks before their official English release date. I was able to get Obsidian Flames in English before I got a hold of Japanese Ruler of the Black Flame, which is pretty much unprecedented. There are very few instances where this has happened before SV, but we have another example here, which is Paradox Rift. So the Japanese version, Ancient and Future Flash, came out on the 27th of October, and in English, guess when they came out? Only a week later, on the 3rd of November. So if you went to pre-releases to Paradox Rift, you could actually access the cards in English a week before the Japanese release, which is a little bit crazy. But I think what that does mean is one of the reasons why Japanese maybe was a bit hyped or more hyped in the past few years is it always comes out earlier than English, so you can experience it well ahead of English. But that seems to be closing a little bit. Now that doesn't mean that Japanese isn't superior to English in my view. The texture detailing is still far superior on the Japanese cards. However, I have noticed that the print quality is a lot worse in Japanese than it used to be. So hopefully they fix that. But to finish off this point, the gap is definitely closing between the languages. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the boom part of this and why I do think that you should be investing in sealed. As I've shown at the very start of the video, these boxes are just extremely cheap at the moment, right? So in my view, your downside risk if investing in Pokemon SV sets is very, very low. Put 151 aside because I'll deal with that in a different video. 151 is obviously extremely expensive. But if you look at all of the other sets that came out post 151, I call these the lost sets a little bit so far, because there's genuinely just so little interest in them that shops in the UK are basically having to dump them at cost or close to cost. But what that means for me is that there's plenty of opportunity and upside potential for these boxes. Because when you look at the cards that are actually in here, I think they're a little bit underrated. So let me try and pull one of those out to show you guys. So as I was saying, the box prices for these are extremely cheap at the moment, but I think that the prices are unwarranted. And what that means is, I do think that some of these recent sets have some good cards in them and they're really undervalued. So if I just look at Wild Force on Pokélector, for example, you've got the Sharpedo, just what a sick card illustrated by Shinji Kanda. If we move on to like the art rares, or before even the art rares, you've got Gengar EX half art, which again is probably one of the most popular Pokemon. And because you've got that EX half art, you're obviously going to have the full art. But then if we just look at the art rares as well, I mean, just look at this beautiful Ghastly art rare. All of these cards, I think, are really being overlooked at the moment because, I mean, they're part of Wild Force, which nobody seems to want. But there we have a Gengar full art. And then we go into the SARs. I mean, I'm not going to go into the Gouging Fire and etc. But if you look at Morty's Confidence, what a beautiful card, which again contains the Gengar. So in my view, you can buy these boxes at retail price at the moment, and the cards inside merit a higher box value than what's currently indicated. The only thing I have to go off of that is past evidence of past generations and what past box sets have done. So when you're looking at past data, empirical data, and you're predicting the future, that's inductive reasoning. So I'm inducing, not deducting, that these sets are going to go up in price because they could still go down a bit more from the current price, which is like retail on Amazon, but I don't think they can go down that much more. And on to the point that I was making about comparing with other sets, right? One of the biggest things that I think people don't need to panic about with SV is that it's going to get better. So on my screen right now, I have a comparison of all the Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet sets based on when they came out compared in terms of releases. So let me just compare SV1S Scarlet and SV1V Violet. These each guarantee you 3 art rares per box, and then you have the beautiful Gardevoir SAR in Scarlet, you've got the Miraidon SAR in Violet, then you've got the Penny in Scarlet SAR again, then you've got the iconic Miriam SAR in Violet. When I compare that with what you can get in Sword and Shield, the only card that you want from these two sets is the Marnie SR, which is again a trainer card. But aside from that, these sets don't have that much in them. Same with Sun and Moon. Okay, you've got the Umbreon and the Espeon full arts, but they're not special arts, they're just like rainbow cards full arts. Then obviously you do have the Lily and Moon, but again, that's about it. If I compare Triplet Beat to VMAX Rising, oh my god, VMAX Rising is one of the worst sets ever in my opinion. The only thing that's good that's in here is the Sonia Trainer, but that gets offset by Triplet Beat, which has the Dendra SAR, the Dendra SR, and then it has 3 starter Pokemon SAR cards, plus all of the ARs for the evolution chain. Again, SV wins. I don't even know what's in SM1 Plus, but Max will correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's anything good in that. Now we look at Clay Burst against Alolan Moonlight, for example. So Alolan Moonlight in SM has the Mallow, but I don't know anything else that it has. Rebellion Clash or Rebellion Crash, probably one of the worst SV sets. I mean, some people like it because they think it's underrated, but in terms of values and what you can see coming out of this, I think there's nothing good in that pretty much. Compare that with Clay Burst, you've obviously got the Iono SAR, the Iono SR, and then you've got 4 Pokemon Alt Art SARs. Again, SV wins. And just mind that this isn't the first year of SV, right? So these are the early sets which are meant to be bad, but actually when you compare them to their predecessors, they're already up compared to that. I'm not going to touch on 151 because 151 obviously wins, but even these sets, Shiny Treasure, Wild Force, okay, when we get to Wild Force compared to Sword and Shield, it starts to get competitive. I think Sword and Shield wins. But the point I'm making is that we are currently still in the very early stages of the era. Crimson Haze just got announced as the next set. Again, that's based on the Blood Moon Ursaluna. Obviously, Wild Force and Cyber Judge are again based on DLC content. So currently we are in what I call the DLC block of the generation, and what I'm using is Sword and Shield, where they did the Urshifu sets, DLC based sets, and then they did the Calyrex sets, DLC based sets. Look what comes after those sets in Sword and Shield. You have Eevee Heroes and Blue Sky's Dream, which are basically the 2 best sets. Now we know that's not going to happen for SV just yet, because after Crimson Haze, we have Mask of Change, Night Wanderer, and Stellar Miracle. All of these I think are going to be based on DLC still. Stellar Miracle is going to be based on Terapagos, Night Wanderer is going to be based on the Loyal 3, is the speculation, and Mask of Change is going to be based on the legendary Pokemon from the Teal Mask Ogerpon. But I think we need to wait to see what happens until after Stellar Miracle comes out, because I think after that we should be expecting some really good sets. The other thing I'm using to build that precedent is, if you look at Sun and Moon, SM7 Sky Splitting Charisma and SM8 Super Burst Impact was a Rayquaza set and a Lugia set, and that repeated itself in Sword and Shield. So you had Blue Sky Stream, S7R as the Rayquaza set, and then you had Paradigm Trigger as the Lugia set. So what this tells me is that each generation is always going to have a few sets based on the most popular Pokemon in the franchise ever. So for SV, we've got 151 already in the first year, but we don't know yet what these popular Pokemon base sets are going to be. I certainly expect them to come out. It will be a huge mistake for Pokemon if they don't do that. But just remember that we still have about 1.5 years left, or maybe 2 years of SV left. So I think there's plenty of time for sets to massively pick up. Once those better sets come out, I think people are maybe going to want to look at these cheaper sets as a way to get into SV as well. So that for me is a big plus as to why you should invest in SV now. To close off the video, my final argument as to why I think you should invest in SV is, when we're looking at box prices being down, we need to disaggregate the causes, right? So is the current downturn in SV isolated to SV, or is it across the board in Pokemon? As I've just said before, waifu prices are massively down. So that is not just an SV problem, but it is affecting SV prices and investment interest in any Pokemon set at the moment. Obviously, you've got the vintage block of cards, which are maybe a little bit less affected, but from the auction prices that I'm seeing, it seems like everything is down across the board, obviously to different rates, but that in itself is probably affecting SV, but not necessarily a reflection on the quality of SV sets itself. So to conclude, I do back SV sets to pick up. I think the time to buy is when no one is looking, which is right now, because no one cares about it. If you look at the views on my channel, my One Piece views massively outstrip my Pokemon views. I think there's a reason for that. So time will tell as to what's going to happen with SV, but I'm still positive about that SV. Despite the massive downturn in prices at the moment, I do back it to pick up. I do think some of the sets that have come out so far are really good. And as I've said before, I will talk about Pokemon 151 in another video. However, I do think that the actual opportunity is away from this set and in the other sets, because everyone is looking at this set and everyone is backing this set to be the main sort of flag bearer for SV, right? So there's actually very little attention spread across the other sets. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment for sure if you enjoyed this video. I'll try to look through all the comments and reply to them, because I think this is more of an open discussion as to how SV will do. At the end of the day, no one really knows, right? And you shouldn't take my advice as specific financial advice. But I've just tried to present the pros and cons, and I think there are more pros than cons at the moment, particularly given the prices. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.